The blast of winter wind hit Amelia Fairchild's face like 1,000 frozen needles as her horse stumbled on the narrow mountain pass. And she knew in that terrifying instant, before the world turned white, that she had made a fatal mistake leaving Silverton, Colorado, alone. The rumble started somewhere above her, a sound like thunder rolling down from heaven itself, and she barely had time to look up before the mountainside gave way. Snow crashed over her in a suffocating wave, pulling her from her saddle and into a world of cold darkness that swallowed every scream, every breath, every desperate prayer she tried to form. Warren Emmett had been tracking the woman's horse prints for the better part of 3 hours, his jaw set tight with worry as the wind picked up, and the sky turned the color of old pewter. He had seen her leave town that morning, a stubborn set to her shoulders that he recognized all too well from their brief encounters at the general store and the church socials. She was new to Silverton, having arrived just 6 weeks prior from Boston to teach at the small schoolhouse, and she clearly did not understand that these Colorado mountains in February 1883 were not forgiving to anyone, let alone a city woman who thought she knew better than the locals who warned her about the weather. The sound reached him before he saw it, that terrible roar that made his blood run cold. Warren spurred his buckskin gelding forward, his heart hammering against his ribs as he watched the avalanche tear down the mountainside like the wrath of God himself. He pulled his horse to a stop at a safe distance, his breath coming in harsh gasps as he scanned the devastation before him. Tons of snow had buried the narrow pass, and somewhere under all that white death was the schoolteacher who had smiled at him just yesterday when he had tipped his hat to her outside the mercantile. Most men would have turned back. Most men would have said it was too late, that nobody could survive being buried under that much snow, that it would be suicide to even try. Warren Emmett was not most men. He swung down from his horse, grabbed his shovel from where it was tied to his saddle, and started digging. The first hour was the hardest. His muscles screamed at him as he threw shovel after shovel of heavy, packed snow aside, trying to remember exactly where he had last seen her tracks before the avalanche hit. The cold bit through his leather gloves and his thick coat, but he kept digging, kept searching, kept praying under his breath that he would find something, anything, that would tell him he was looking in the right place. The second hour brought doubt. His arms felt like lead and his back ached something fierce, but Warren forced himself to keep going. He had lost his younger sister to these mountains 5 years ago when she had wandered too far from their ranch during a snowstorm. He had searched for 3 days before they found her body, frozen and peaceful, tucked beneath a pine tree as if she had simply fallen asleep. He would not let another woman die in this unforgiving wilderness if he had any power to prevent it. The third hour brought a miracle. His shovel hit something solid that was not rock, and Warren dropped to his knees, digging frantically with his hands now, pulling away chunks of snow until he saw the dark fabric of a riding cloak. He dug faster, his breath coming in ragged gasps until he uncovered her face, pale as death itself, her lips tinged blue, her eyes closed. "No," he breathed, pressing his fingers against her throat, searching for a pulse. For a terrible moment there was nothing, and then he felt it, so faint it was almost not there at all, a flutter of life that made his own heart leap with desperate hope. "Hold on," he told her, though he did not know if she could hear him. "Just hold on." He worked quickly now, clearing the snow from her body, finding her trapped awkwardly with one leg bent beneath her, and her arms crossed over her chest, as if she had tried to protect herself when the avalanche hit. Warren carefully straightened her limbs, checking for broken bones, finding nothing that seemed too badly damaged, though there would surely be bruises and sprains. Her breathing was so shallow he had to put his cheek near her mouth to feel the faint whisper of air. Getting her onto his horse was a challenge that required every ounce of strength he had left. But Warren managed it, pulling himself up behind her and cradling her against his chest to share what warmth his body could provide. The ride back to Silverton took twice as long as it should have because he had to go slow, had to make sure he did not jostle her too much or let her slip from his grasp. He talked to her the whole way, telling her stories about the ranch he ran with his older brother, about the cattle they raised and the horses they trained, about anything and everything just to fill the terrible silence and convince himself that she was still alive. The sun was setting by the time he made it to Doc Henderson's house on the edge of town, and Warren nearly fell from his saddle in his exhaustion. He carried Amelia inside, bellowing for the doctor, and within moments the older man appeared, took one look at the unconscious woman in Warren's arms, and immediately cleared his examining table. "Avalanche," Warren said, his voice hoarse from the cold and the talking. "Been buried for hours. Her pulse is weak, but she is breathing." Doc Henderson nodded, his weathered face grave as he began his examination. "You saved her life, son. Another hour and she would have been gone." He looked up at Warren, who was swaying on his feet. "Martha," he called to his wife, "get this man some coffee and food before he collapses on my floor." Warren wanted to argue, wanted to stay right there and make sure Amelia was going to be all right, but his body had other ideas. His legs gave out, and he found himself sitting hard in a chair, accepting a steaming mug of coffee from Mrs. Henderson with hands that shook so badly he nearly spilled it. "She is going to live," Doc Henderson announced after what felt like an eternity. "She is suffering from severe exposure, and there is some frostbite on her fingers and toes, but nothing that will not heal given time and proper care. The bigger concern is pneumonia. The next few days will tell us if her lungs can recover from the cold." Warren stayed at the doctor's house all through that night and into the next day, dozing fitfully in the chair beside Amelia's bed, jerking awake every time she stirred or made a sound. She was caught in the grip of fever now, her body fighting to recover from the ordeal, and Doc Henderson kept her bundled in blankets, forcing warm broth between her lips whenever she was conscious enough to swallow. It was on the third day that her eyes finally opened and stayed open, focusing slowly on the unfamiliar ceiling above her, then moving to take in the room, and finally landing on Warren, who was slumped in his chair with his hat pulled low over his eyes. "Where am I?" Her voice was barely a whisper, rough and scratchy. Warren's head snapped up and he was on his feet in an instant, moving to her bedside. "Doc Henderson's place. You are safe." He reached for a glass of water on the bedside table, carefully helping her take a few small sips. "How do you feel?" "Like I was buried under a mountain," Amelia said, and there was the faintest hint of humor in her eyes despite her obvious weakness. "Did you pull me out?" Warren nodded. "Found you just in time." She studied his face, taking in the lines of exhaustion, the dark circles under his eyes, the growth of beard that said he had not left her side in days. "You saved my life. I did what any decent person would do." "No," Amelia said firmly, her hand emerging from beneath the blankets to grasp his. Her fingers were bandaged where the frostbite had been worst, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "You did what a hero does. Thank you." Warren felt heat rise to his face and he cleared his throat awkwardly. "You should rest, Miss Fairchild. You are still recovering." "Only if you promise to rest too," she said, her eyes already drifting closed again. "You look terrible." Despite everything, Warren found himself smiling. "Yes, madam." Over the next 2 weeks, Amelia recovered slowly but steadily under Doc Henderson's care and Warren's watchful eye. The cowboy seemed to find every excuse to stop by and check on her, bringing fresh flowers from Mrs. Chen's greenhouse, books from the lending library, and news from the town. Amelia found herself looking forward to his visits more than she wanted to admit, found herself studying the strong lines of his face and the gentleness in his calloused hands when he helped her sit up or walk around the room as she regained her strength. "Why did you come looking for me?" she asked him one afternoon when the winter sun was streaming through the window, making the snow outside sparkle like diamonds. "You did not even know me." Warren was quiet for a long moment, turning his hat over in his hands. "I knew enough," he finally said. "Knew you were new to these mountains. Knew you did not understand how dangerous they could be. I saw which direction you headed, and when the storm started rolling in, I just had a feeling." He met her eyes. "I lost my sister to these mountains 5 years back. I could not just sit there knowing someone else might die if I did not at least try." Amelia's throat tightened with emotion. "I am so sorry about your sister. Her name was Lucy. She was 16, stubborn as a mule and convinced she knew everything." His smile was sad but fond. "Reminds me a bit of someone else I know." "I am not that stubborn," Amelia protested, but she was smiling too. "You rode out into a mountain pass in February despite 3 different people warning you about the weather," Warren pointed out. "That is pretty much the definition of stubborn." She could not argue with that. "I thought I knew better. I thought because I had read about the mountains, because I had prepared, that I would be fine. I was arrogant and foolish, and I nearly died because of it." "But you did not die," Warren said quietly. "And maybe this is the wake-up call you needed to understand that book learning and real-world experience are 2 very different things." Amelia nodded slowly. "I have a lot to learn about living out here, about surviving in this place." "Then I will teach you," Warren said, the words coming out before he could stop them. He cleared his throat. "I mean, if you want. Once you are fully recovered, I could show you the safe trails, teach you how to read the weather, how to prepare for the unexpected." Her heart did a strange little flutter in her chest. "I would like that very much." 3 weeks after the avalanche, Doc Henderson finally declared Amelia well enough to leave his care, though she still had to be careful with her fingers where the frostbite had damaged the tissue. She had lost the tips of 2 fingers on her left hand, but the doctor assured her that she had been incredibly lucky it had not been worse. Warren was there to help her gather her few belongings and walk her back to the small house she rented behind the schoolhouse, staying close in case her legs gave out from the exertion. "I do not know how I can ever repay you," Amelia said when they reached her front door. "You gave me my life back." Warren shook his head. "No repayment needed. I am just glad you are all right." He started to turn away to tip his hat and leave like a gentleman should, but Amelia caught his sleeve. "Stay," she said softly. "Have coffee with me. Let me at least offer you that much." He should have said no. Should have maintained the proper distance between a cowboy and a schoolteacher, between a man who worked with his hands and a woman who had come from Boston society. But Warren found himself nodding, following her inside, sitting at her small kitchen table while she carefully measured out coffee grounds with her bandaged fingers. They talked for hours that afternoon, the conversation flowing easily from one topic to another. Amelia told him about growing up in Boston, about her parents who had died of influenza 2 years ago, about her decision to come west and start a new life teaching children on the frontier. Warren talked about the ranch he ran with his brother Wesley, about their plans to expand the herd, about the challenges of ranching in Colorado's harsh climate. "You ever miss Boston?" Warren asked as the afternoon light began to fade. Amelia considered the question carefully. "I miss some things. The theater, the libraries, the ease of getting anywhere I wanted to go. But I do not miss the stuffiness, the way everyone was always judging everyone else, the feeling that my whole life was already mapped out for me before I even had a chance to live it. She met his eyes across the table. Out here, I feel like I can breathe, like I can be whoever I want to be. Even after nearly dying in an avalanche, even after that, she said firmly, maybe especially after that. Because it taught me that life is precious and short and I should not waste it being afraid. Warren found himself leaning forward, drawn by something in her eyes, in the strength he saw there. What else do you want to do? Besides teach, I mean. Everything, Amelia said with a laugh. I want to learn to ride properly, not just the side saddle posture they teach ladies in the East. I want to learn to shoot. I want to see the mountains in summer when they are green and alive. I want to meet the ranching families and understand how they make their living from this land. I want to really live here, not just exist. I can help you with all of that, Warren said, his voice low and serious. If you will let me. Something passed between them in that moment, something electric and undeniable. Amelia felt it down to her bones, this pull toward this man who had literally dug her out of death and given her a second chance at life. I would like that more than anything. Spring came late to the Colorado mountains that year, but when it finally arrived, it was glorious. Amelia had returned to teaching as soon as she was able, and her students were delighted to have her back, showering her with handmade cards and small gifts. But it was her time after school that she treasured most, because that was when Warren would ride into town and take her out to show her the world beyond Silverton streets. He taught her to ride astride, lending her a pair of his old trousers that she wore under her split skirt, showing her how to move with the horse instead of fighting against it. He taught her to shoot, setting up tin cans on fence posts and patiently correcting her stance and aim until she could hit the target more often than not. He showed her the best fishing spots, the places where wildflowers grew in riotous profusion, the hidden valleys where deer grazed in the evening light. But more than teaching her skills, Warren showed her the beauty of this harsh land she had chosen to make her home. He showed her how the aspen leaves turned silver in the breeze, how the sunset painted the mountain peaks in shades of pink and gold, how the stars at night were so bright and numerous they looked like diamonds scattered across black velvet. He shared pieces of himself with her, stories from his childhood, dreams for the future, fears he had never voiced to another soul. Amelia found herself falling for him slowly and completely, the way spring melt fills the mountain streams, inevitable and unstoppable. She loved the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the calluses on his hands that spoke of hard work and dedication, the gentleness he showed to his horses, and the way he talked to them like they were old friends. She loved his quiet strength, the way he never boasted or bragged but simply did what needed to be done. She loved how he listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered to him. For his part, Warren was fighting a losing battle against his own heart. He had not meant to fall in love with Amelia Fairchild. She was educated and refined, from a world so different from his own that they might as well have been from different planets. But there was something about her that drew him like nothing else ever had. He loved her courage, the way she had faced her near-death experience and come out of it more determined than ever to embrace life. He loved her curiosity, her eagerness to learn, the way she threw herself wholeheartedly into everything she tried. He loved her laugh, bright and unrestrained, so different from the reserved smile she had worn when she first arrived in Silverton. He loved how she looked at him like he was someone special, someone worth knowing, not just a cowboy who smelled like horses and hard work. It was on a warm afternoon in late May, with wildflowers blooming all around them and the sound of a nearby creek burbling over stones, that things between them finally came to a head. They had ridden out to one of Warren's favorite spots, a meadow high up in the mountains where you could see for miles in every direction, and were sitting on a blanket eating the lunch Amelia had packed. "I have been thinking," Amelia said, plucking at the grass beside the blanket. "About what comes next." Warren felt his stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "My contract with the school board is up at the end of summer. They have offered to renew it, but I have to give them an answer soon." She looked at him, her green eyes serious. "I need to know if I have a reason to stay." His throat went dry. "Amelia, I am tired of pretending," she said, the words rushing out in a torrent now that she had started. "I am tired of acting like we are just friends when every time you leave I count the hours until I can see you again. I am tired of telling myself that these feelings will fade when they just keep growing stronger. I nearly died on that mountain, Warren, and you brought me back. You gave me a second chance at life, and I do not want to waste it being afraid to tell you the truth." Warren stared at her, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. "What truth?" "That I love you," Amelia said simply. "That I have loved you probably since the moment I woke up and saw you sitting beside my bed looking like you had fought the devil himself to keep me alive. That I want to stay here in Silverton, but only if there is a future for us. Because I cannot keep spending time with you, falling deeper and deeper, if you do not feel the same way." For a moment Warren could not speak, could not do anything but look at this incredible woman who had just laid her heart bare before him. Then he was moving, closing the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. "I have been in love with you since the day I pulled you from that snow and felt your heartbeat under my fingers," he said roughly. "I have been in love with you through every visit, every ride, every moment we have spent together. I did not say anything because I did not think I had the right. You are educated and cultured and could have any man you wanted. Why would you choose a cowboy who has nothing to offer but calloused hands and a small ranch?" "Because those calloused hands saved my life," Amelia said, covering his hands with her own. "Because that small ranch is more home than anywhere I have ever lived. Because when I am with you I feel like the best version of myself. Because you see me, Warren, really see me, not just the schoolteacher or the lady from Boston, but me." Warren kissed her then, a kiss that held all the emotion they had been holding back for months, a kiss that tasted like hope and promise and coming home. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, their foreheads resting together. "Marry me," Warren said. "Stay here, renew your teaching contract and marry me. We will make a life together. It will not be easy, ranching is hard work and the winters are brutal, but I swear I will spend every day trying to make you happy." Amelia felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of pure joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married in August in the small church in Silverton, with half the town in attendance. Wesley Emmett stood up as his brother's best man, grinning broadly and clapping Warren on the shoulder so hard he nearly knocked him over. Martha Henderson helped Amelia into the simple but beautiful white dress that had been altered from Martha's own wedding gown. Doc Henderson walked Amelia down the aisle since she had no family of her own, and when he placed her hand in Warren's, there were tears in the old doctor's eyes. The wedding celebration lasted long into the night, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could possibly eat. But Amelia's favorite moment came later, when she and Warren finally escaped the festivities and rode out to the ranch that was now her home. Warren carried her over the threshold of the small but sturdy house, setting her down gently in the main room. "Welcome home, Mrs. Emmett," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Amelia looked around at the house that Warren and Wesley had built with their own hands, at the furniture that was simple but well made, at the windows that looked out over the mountains she had come to love. "It is perfect," she said. "Everything is perfect." Their first year of marriage was an adjustment, but a happy one. Amelia continued teaching at the schoolhouse, riding out each morning on the gentle mare Warren had given her as a wedding present. She threw herself into ranch life with the same enthusiasm she brought to everything else, learning to cook on the wood stove, to preserve fruits and vegetables for the winter, to help with the horses and even occasionally with the cattle. She made curtains for the windows and planted a garden behind the house, filling their home with small touches that made it uniquely theirs. Warren found himself constantly amazed by his wife's determination and resilience. She attacked every challenge with fierce determination, never complaining when things were difficult, always willing to try again when she failed at something. She brought joy into his life in ways he had not known were possible, her laughter filling the house, her presence turning their simple ranch into a real home. They weathered their first winter together, and though the snow was deep and the cold was bitter, Amelia never once regretted her decision to stay. She had learned her lesson from her near-death experience, never venturing far from home without telling Warren exactly where she was going, always checking the weather, always prepared for the worst. Warren found himself relaxing as the months passed, trusting that she had truly adapted to mountain life, that she understood the dangers and respected them. It was in the spring of their second year together that Amelia discovered she was pregnant. She told Warren one evening after supper, her eyes shining with excitement and nervousness, and he swept her into his arms and spun her around until she was dizzy, laughing and scolding him all at once for being so reckless. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, like he could not quite believe it was real. "We are going to be parents." "We are," Amelia confirmed, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "In about 6 months if Doc Henderson's calculations are correct." Warren immediately became overly protective, insisting she stop doing any heavy work around the ranch, worrying every time she rode into town for school. Amelia tolerated his hovering for about 2 weeks before she sat him down and firmly explained that she was pregnant, not made of glass, and if he did not stop treating her like she was about to break, she would lose her mind. "I know you are just worried," she said, taking his hands in hers. "But you have to trust me to know my own body and my own limits. I promise I will be careful. I promise I will not take unnecessary risks. But I also need to live my life, Warren. I need to keep teaching and helping around the ranch and being myself." Warren sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You are right. I am sorry. I just keep thinking about everything that could go wrong." "And I keep thinking about everything that will go right," Amelia said softly. "We are going to have a baby, Warren, our baby. It is a blessing and a joy, and I want to enjoy every moment of it, not spend the whole time wrapped in cotton wool." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "All right. But you have to promise me that if you start feeling poorly, or if something does not feel right, you will tell me immediately." "I promise," she said. Their son was born in late October, on a crisp autumn day when the aspens were turning gold and the air smelled like wood smoke and coming winter. The labor was long and difficult, and Warren spent every moment of it pacing the floor while Doc Henderson and Martha attended to Amelia. When he finally heard the thin wail of his newborn son, Warren felt his knees go weak with relief. "You have a healthy boy," Martha announced, appearing in the doorway with a blanket-wrapped bundle. "And your wife is tired but doing well. You can see her now." Warren practically ran to the bedroom, dropping to his knees beside the bed where Amelia lay, exhausted but radiant, with their son cradled in her arms. "Look what we made," she said softly, pulling back the blanket so Warren could see the tiny red face, the miniature hands curled into fists. "He is perfect," Warren breathed, carefully touching one impossibly small hand. The baby's fingers immediately curled around his much larger finger, and Warren felt something in his chest crack wide open. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas, after Warren's father, and from the moment he entered the world, Tom Emmett was the center of their universe. Warren proved to be a devoted father, getting up for middle-of-the-night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, spending hours simply holding his son and marveling at the tiny person they had created. Amelia took a year off from teaching to focus on caring for Tom, and though she sometimes missed her students, she treasured the time with her baby. As Tom grew from infant to toddler, the ranch grew too. Warren and Wesley expanded their operation, adding more cattle and horses, hiring on a couple of hands to help with the work. The little ranch became prosperous, not wealthy by any means, but successful enough that Warren could start building additions onto the house, creating more room for their growing family. When Tom was 3 years old, Amelia gave birth to twin daughters. The labor came on suddenly one spring morning, and Warren barely had time to fetch Doc Henderson before the first baby arrived. The second followed 20 minutes later, and suddenly, their family had grown by two. "Two girls," Warren said in wonder, holding one daughter while Amelia nursed the other. "Annie and Emma." Amelia smiled, looking down at the tiny girl at her breast, then over at her husband cradling her sister. "Our family is getting quite large, Mr. Emmett." "Best thing that ever happened to me," Warren said firmly. "Every single one of you." The years rolled by, marked by seasons and harvests and small triumphs and challenges. Tom grew into a serious, responsible boy who idolized his father and followed him everywhere, learning ranch work almost before he could properly walk. Annie and Emma were identical twins who delighted in confusing everyone, two bright, mischievous girls who kept Amelia constantly on her toes. Amelia eventually returned to teaching part-time, bringing the younger children with her to school when they were old enough, teaching her own children alongside the rancher's children and miners' children who filled her classroom. Warren watched his family grow with a sense of awe and gratitude that never faded. Every morning when he woke up next to Amelia, every evening when he came home to the sounds of children playing and dinner cooking, he remembered that cold February day when he had dug through tons of snow to find her barely breathing. He remembered how close he had come to never having any of this, and it made him appreciate every single moment. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren planned a surprise for Amelia. He had Wesley take the children for the weekend, and he took his wife back to the meadow where they had confessed their love for each other all those years ago. It was late summer, the wildflowers in full bloom, the sky a brilliant blue overhead. "I cannot believe it has been 10 years, Amelia said, sitting on the same blanket in the same spot where they had shared that fateful picnic. "Sometimes it feels like just yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have been together forever." "The best 10 years of my life," Warren said, producing a small wrapped package from his saddlebag. "I got you something." Amelia carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a beautiful leather journal, her initials embossed on the cover. "Warren, it is beautiful." "I thought you could use it to write down your stories," he said. "You are always telling the children stories at bedtime, making up these incredible adventures. You should write them down, preserve them somehow." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. In all their years together, Warren had never stopped surprising her with his thoughtfulness, his attention to the small things that mattered to her. "Thank you," she said softly. "I love it. I love you." I love you too, Warren said, pulling her close. More than I could ever find the words to tell you. You saved me just as much as I saved you that day, you know. I was just going through the motions before you came into my life, working the ranch, getting by but not really living. You taught me how to live again. We saved each other, Amelia said, resting her head against his shoulder. That is what love does. It saves us from ourselves, from our loneliness, from the parts of us that are broken. It makes us whole. They sat there in the meadow as the afternoon light turned golden, talking about their children, their dreams for the future, the life they had built together from that single moment of crisis on a frozen mountain pass. They talked about the ranch and how Tom was already showing promise as a horseman, about Annie and Emma's upcoming first day of school, about the possibility of adding on to the house again if their family continued to grow. You ever regret it? Warren asked as the sun began to set. Giving up your life in Boston, staying here, marrying a cowboy instead of some educated city man. Amelia turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. Not for a single second. This life, this place, you and our children, it is everything I never knew I wanted, everything I needed. She smiled. Besides, I did marry an educated man. You might not have fancy degrees, but you are one of the smartest, most capable people I have ever known. You taught me more about life and love and what really matters than I ever learned in all my years of schooling in Boston. Warren kissed her softly, tasting the truth in her words, feeling the absolute rightness of this woman in his arms. Come on, he said when they finally broke apart. We should head back before it gets full dark. Not yet, Amelia said, pulling him back down to the blanket. Just a few more minutes. I want to remember this exactly as it is right now. The two of us, this place, this moment. I want to hold on to it forever. So they stayed, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the stars come out one by one, neither of them speaking because no words were needed. They had found each other against impossible odds, had built a life and a love that was stronger than any mountain, deeper than any snow. They had faced death and come out on the other side more alive than ever. They had everything they needed right here in this moment. The ride back to the ranch was quiet and peaceful, their horses moving at an easy walk through the moonlit landscape. When they finally reached home, Wesley had the children already in bed, though Annie snuck out to hug them goodnight one more time before allowing herself to be shepherded back to her room. Thank you for today, Amelia said later as they lay in bed, Warren's arms wrapped around her. It was perfect. Every day with you is perfect, Warren murmured against her hair. Even the hard ones, especially the hard ones because we face them together. Amelia smiled in the darkness, placing her hand over his where it rested on her stomach. I think we might be facing another interesting challenge in about 7 months. Warren went very still. Are you saying what I think you are saying? If you think I am saying I am pregnant again, then yes, that is exactly what I am saying. Warren let out a whoop of joy that probably woke the entire household, rolling Amelia onto her back and covering her face with kisses until she was laughing and shushing him all at once. Another baby, he kept saying. We are having another baby. We are indeed, Amelia confirmed, happiness bubbling up inside her like champagne. Our 4th child, our growing family. I love you, Warren said, suddenly serious, his forehead resting against hers. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. You and our children, you are everything to me. Everything that matters. I love you too, Amelia whispered. Always and forever, no matter what comes. Their 4th child, another son they named James, was born the following spring, healthy and loud and absolutely perfect. The ranch continued to prosper, and Warren built yet another addition onto the house, creating a proper bedroom for each of the children. Amelia returned to her teaching, though she took the summers off to be with her growing family, to take them on adventures into the mountains she had once feared, to teach them to respect the wilderness while also appreciating its beauty. Tom grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's green eyes and quick mind. He took over more and more of the ranch work as he got older, proving himself capable and responsible beyond his years. Annie and Emma remained inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and communicating in a language all their own. But they were also both excellent students, inheriting their mother's love of learning. James was the baby, spoiled by everyone but somehow managing to remain sweet-natured and kind despite all the attention. The years continued to pass, bringing changes but never diminishing the love at the center of the Emmett family. Wesley eventually married a widow from town, a kind woman named Sarah who brought her own 2 children into the family, expanding their circle even further. The ranch grew into one of the most successful in the region, not through luck but through years of hard work and dedication. Warren and Amelia watched their children grow, celebrating triumphs and supporting them through challenges, always there with advice or comfort or simply a listening ear. They watched Tom fall in love with a rancher's daughter and eventually marry her, bringing her into the family business. They watched Annie decide to become a teacher like her mother, studying at the normal school in Denver before returning to Silverton to take over Amelia's position when she finally retired. They watched Emma surprise everyone by developing a passion for medicine, apprenticing with Doc Henderson until his retirement, then taking over his practice. They watched James choose to be a rancher like his father and brother, working the land he loved with the same dedication Warren had always shown. Through it all, through every season and year, Warren and Amelia remained devoted to each other. They still took rides up to their meadow on special occasions, still held hands while watching the sunset, still found ways to make each other laugh even after decades of marriage. The passion that had brought them together never faded. It simply evolved, deepening into something richer and more complex than either of them could have imagined in those early days. When they had been married for 25 years, their children and grandchildren threw them an enormous celebration. The ranch was filled with people, neighbors and friends and family, all coming together to honor the couple who had become something of a legend in Silverton. Warren gave a short speech, thanking everyone for coming, but he saved his most important words for Amelia. 25 years ago, I pulled this woman out of the snow, thinking I was saving her life, he said, his arm around his wife's waist. But the truth is, she saved mine. She took a lonely cowboy who was just going through the motions and taught him what it meant to really live, to really love, to build something meaningful. Every good thing in my life comes from that one decision to go looking for her, to dig through that snow, to not give up even when it seemed hopeless. Amelia, you are my miracle, my blessing, my everything. Here is to 25 more years. Amelia stood and kissed him to thunderous applause, tears streaming down her face. I love you, she said, just for him. Today, tomorrow, and forever. They did get those 25 more years and then some. They grew old together, their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing down but their minds remaining sharp and their love never wavering. They became grandparents multiple times over, filling their home with the sounds of children's laughter once again. They sat together on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset paint the mountains in glorious colors, reflecting on a life well lived. Warren passed away first, at the age of 82, peacefully in his sleep with Amelia beside him. His last words to her were the same as his first promise all those years ago. I love you. Amelia mourned him deeply but not desperately, because she had learned long ago that real love never truly ends. She could feel him in every corner of the ranch they had built together, in the faces of their children and grandchildren, in the mountains that had brought them together. She lived another 3 years, spending her time writing in the journals Warren had given her over the years, recording the story of their life together for future generations. She wrote about the avalanche and the rescue, about falling in love in a mountain meadow, about building a family and a life from nothing but determination and devotion. She wrote about the hard times and the good times, the losses and the triumphs, the everyday moments that had made up their extraordinary life together. On a warm summer afternoon, not long after her 85th birthday, Amelia passed away in her sleep, sitting in her favorite chair on the porch with a journal open in her lap. Her family found her there, peaceful and serene, with a smile on her face. When they read what she had been writing, they found it was a letter to Warren. "My dearest love," it read, "I am coming home to you. Thank you for that day on the mountain when you refused to give up, when you dug through the snow and brought me back to life. Thank you for every day after, for every laugh and tear, every sunrise and sunset, every moment of joy and sorrow we shared. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I cannot wait to be with you again. Until we meet on the other side, know that you were loved beyond measure, and that the life we built together was more beautiful than any story I ever could have imagined. Forever yours, Amelia." They buried her next to Warren in the small cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a headstone that bore both their names and a simple inscription: "Together in life, together in death, together for eternity." Their children and grandchildren gathered around the grave, sharing stories and memories, crying and laughing in equal measure as they celebrated 2 lives that had been lived fully and well. The ranch continued through the generations, passed down from parent to child, each one adding their own chapter to the family story while never forgetting the couple who had started it all. The story of Warren and Amelia became legend in Silverton, told and retold around dinner tables and campfires, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best, that love can bloom even in the harshest conditions, and that the choices we make in moments of crisis can change everything. Tom's grandson, Warren II, became particularly interested in his great-grandparents' story. He found Amelia's journals in an old trunk in the attic and spent months reading them, absorbing every detail of their incredible journey. When he was old enough, he had portions of the journals published, sharing the story with a wider audience. The book became a sensation, inspiring people across the country with its message of hope and resilience and enduring love. People came from all over to visit Silverton, to see the ranch where Warren and Amelia had built their life, to hike up to the meadow where they had confessed their love, to stand at the place where the avalanche had nearly ended Amelia's life before it had really begun. The town embraced its connection to the famous couple, proud to have been part of their story. But for the Emmett family, Warren and Amelia were not legends or historical figures. They were simply grandpa and grandma, great-grandpa and great-grandma, ancestors who had loved fiercely and lived fully, who had faced impossible odds and come out stronger on the other side. They were the foundation upon which the entire family was built, the example they all tried to live up to, the proof that true love really does exist and can conquer anything. In the end, the story of Warren and Amelia was not just about an avalanche and a dramatic rescue, though that was certainly how it started. It was about 2 people who found each other against all odds and chose every single day to keep finding each other. It was about building a life from nothing but hard work and determination and love. It was about facing challenges together and coming out stronger on the other side. It was about family and legacy and the everyday miracles that make up a truly extraordinary life. Their love story became woven into the very fabric of Silverton, Colorado, a testament to the power of human connection and the resilience of the human spirit. The mountains that had nearly killed Amelia became the backdrop for their greatest happiness, the source of their livelihood, the constant presence in their life together. The snow that had buried her became just another part of the landscape, neither good nor evil, simply nature being nature. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Warren and Amelia were together again, holding hands and watching the sun set over the mountains they had loved, whole and young and perfect, their story complete but their love eternal. They had lived fully, loved completely, and left behind a legacy that would endure for generations. They had taken a single moment of crisis and turned it into a lifetime of joy. They had found each other in the worst possible circumstances and created the best possible life. That was their gift to each other and to everyone who came after them. The knowledge that love really can save us, that hope is never foolish, that the choices we make matter, and that sometimes the person who saves your life becomes the person you cannot live without. Warren had dug through snow for hours to find Amelia still breathing faint, and in doing so, he had found his future, his family, his forever. She had survived against impossible odds, and in surviving, she had found her home, her purpose, her one true love. Their story was simple and extraordinary all at once, the kind of tale that gets told and retold because it speaks to something fundamental in the human experience. Our need to connect, to love, to be saved, and to save others in return. It was a Wild West love story for the ages, born from tragedy and triumph, as rugged and beautiful and enduring as the Colorado mountains themselves. And so the years turned into decades, turned into a century, and still the story of Warren and Amelia lived on, inspiring each new generation of Emmett children to live boldly, love deeply, and never give up even when the odds seem impossible. Because if Warren could dig through tons of snow to find one barely breathing woman, if Amelia could survive the unsurvivable and build a whole new life in the wilderness, then anything was possible. Any dream could be achieved, any challenge could be overcome, any love could last forever. That was the true legacy of Warren and Amelia Emmett. Not just the ranch or the family or the journals or even their incredible rescue story, but the belief that love conquers all, that hope never dies, and that the best things in life are worth fighting for no matter what stands in your way. They had lived that truth every single day of their lives together, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful and lasting and real. Their graves on the hill overlooking the ranch became a place of pilgrimage for romantics and dreamers, for people looking for proof that true love exists, that happy endings are possible even after the darkest beginnings. Visitors would stand there in the mountain sunshine, reading the inscription on the headstone, and feel something shift inside them, some small kernel of hope or belief taking root. The ranch itself remained in the family, lovingly maintained and expanded by each successive generation, but never losing the essential character that Warren and Amelia had given it. The house they had built and added onto over the years still stood, now over a century old, filled with their furniture and photographs, and the journals that told their story. It became a museum of sorts, preserved exactly as it had been when they lived there, a window into a time and a love story that captured the imagination. Every year on the anniversary of the Avalanche, the Emmett family gathered at the ranch for a special remembrance celebration. They would hike up to the pass where it had happened, now marked with a simple stone memorial, and someone would tell the story again, keeping it alive for the youngest generation. Then they would hike to the meadow where Warren and Amelia had confessed their love, and they would have a picnic there, recreating that perfect day over a century ago. It became a tradition, a way of honoring not just the people Warren and Amelia had been, but the love they had shared and the family they had created. Children grew up hearing the story, internalizing its lessons, understanding that they were part of something larger than themselves, a legacy of love that stretched back through time and would continue long into the future. The meadow itself became known locally as Emmett Meadow, marked on maps and hiking guides, a beautiful spot that seemed to hold a special kind of magic. People proposed there, had weddings there, scattered ashes there, all drawn by the romance of the place and the story attached to it. The local tourism board eventually had to establish some protections to prevent the meadow from being loved to death. But they never forgot that it was the Emmett family story that had made it famous in the first place. In Silverton itself, the schoolhouse where Amelia had taught for so many years was preserved and turned into a local history museum, with an entire wing dedicated to her life and work. Her students' letters and testimonials filled display cases, speaking of a teacher who had believed in them, challenged them, and prepared them for lives beyond what they had thought possible. Many of those students had gone on to remarkable achievements, and they all credited Miss Fairchild, later Mrs. Emmett, with giving them the foundation they needed to succeed. The church where Warren and Amelia had married still stood, still held services every Sunday, and still proudly displayed the wedding registry with their signatures on it, faded now, but still legible. Young couples getting married there would look at those signatures and hope their love would be half as strong, half as enduring, as what Warren and Amelia had shared. Doc Henderson's old house, where Amelia had recovered from the Avalanche, was now a bed and breakfast, popular with tourists who wanted to sleep in the room where the famous rescue victim had first opened her eyes and met her future husband. The current owners took their role as stewards of history seriously, maintaining period-appropriate furnishings and keeping a copy of Amelia's published journals in every room for guests to read. The town as a whole embraced its connection to the Emmett story, recognizing that it was part of what made Silverton special. Other towns had their mining history or their outlaw legends, but Silverton had a real, documented, beautiful love story that had played out in their streets and mountains. It became part of the town's identity, something residents took pride in, a reminder that even in the harsh reality of frontier life, there was room for romance and hope and happy endings. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the story took on new life in new mediums. Filmmakers came calling, wanting to turn the Emmett story into a movie. The family was selective, turning down offers that seemed exploitative or sensational, eventually agreeing to a thoughtful, independent film that stayed true to the spirit of Warren and Amelia's relationship. The movie was a surprise hit, introducing their story to millions of people around the world and sparking renewed interest in their lives. Scholars and historians studied the journals and letters, using them as primary sources to understand what life was really like in the Colorado mining country in the late 1800s. Amelia's detailed observations and Warren's practical knowledge combined to create an invaluable record of the time period, used in textbooks and documentaries and academic papers. They became famous not just for their love story, but for the window they provided into a vanished world. Through all the attention and fame and retelling, the essential truth of Warren and Amelia's story remained constant. This was a tale of two people who found each other in the worst possible circumstances and chose to build something beautiful together. It was not a fairy tale with magic and impossibilities, but a real story of real people who faced real challenges and overcame them through love and determination and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. That was what made it so powerful, so enduring, so inspiring. Anyone could see themselves in Warren, could imagine being the person who refused to stop digging, who believed in the possibility of rescue even when it seemed hopeless. Anyone could see themselves in Amelia, could imagine surviving the unsurvivable and choosing to rebuild, to embrace a new life, to open their heart to love even after coming so close to death. Their story was universal because it spoke to fundamental human truths. We all want to be saved. We all want to save others. We all want to love and be loved in return. Warren and Amelia had lived those truths out in the most dramatic way possible, but the essence of their relationship, the daily choice to keep choosing each other, was something anyone could understand and aspire to. And so their story lived on, passed down through generations, told and retold, adapted and interpreted, but never losing its essential power. A cowboy who dug through snow for hours to find a woman he barely knew, who was rewarded with a lifetime of love and happiness. A teacher who survived an avalanche and found her true home in the very mountains that had nearly killed her. Two people who met in crisis and built a legacy that would last forever. In the end, that was the real miracle of Warren and Amelia Emmett. Not just that he saved her, not just that they fell in love, but that they created something that outlasted them both, that continued to touch lives and inspire hope more than a century after they were gone. They had taken one extraordinary moment and turned it into an extraordinary life. And in doing so, they had given the world a gift. The knowledge that love really does conquer all, that happy endings are possible, and that sometimes the worst day of your life is really just the beginning of your greatest adventure. Their love was their legacy, and it lived on in every couple who chose each other, every parent who sacrificed for their children, every person who refused to give up even when giving up would be easier. It lived on in the mountains and meadows of Colorado, in the ranch that still bore their name, in the family that still gathered every year to remember and celebrate. It lived on in the hearts of everyone who heard their story and felt something shift inside them, some small seed of hope taking root. Warren and Amelia Emmett had lived and loved and left the world better than they found it. What more could anyone ask for? What more could anyone hope to achieve? Their story was complete, their circle closed, their love eternal. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, they were together still, holding hands and watching the sun set over the mountains they had loved, whole and happy and forever young. Their story told but never truly ending, because love like theirs never really ends at all.